All right. It's our time. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Let's fucking go, dude.
Who am I to let you down? No. Who am I to let you down? Down,
There we go. The perfect distance. Yeah. Goodbye. Damn, dude. Damn, dude. Oh, shit. But guys, what is up? Max on a Borderlands 4 video, and today we're going over my updated guide to Bloody Summoner VEX. Now, this is the first build that I ever posted for VEX. It's what I recommended for leveling. The core idea of the build and the concept was we were going to be spamming Spectres, and these Spectres were going to be using elemental weapons and proccing massive bleed on enemies. And obviously, after the bleed changes, a lot of that damage that was happening on the build has been removed, basically. And so this is one of the longest times I've spent testing and trying to make a good build. We spent 2 days specking like literally every different combination of Spectres, weapons, and setups until we finally landed on something that I think is really, really cool and really powerful. And the big goal was to make your Spectres do the damage. I didn't want to be using a Spectre build, but having other things do damage. I wanted my Spectres to be able to kill things while I just sat back and watched. And so that is what we're doing in this build. And a big part of that damage is actually coming from rockets or ordnance. Speaking of rockets, this video is sponsored by Rocket Money. With all the subscription services out there, it can be really hard to keep track of how much money you're spending and exactly where your money is going every month. Well, that's where today's sponsor comes in. Rocket Money is an app that allows you to manage your finances. I actually downloaded this app off of another YouTuber's ad because they were pretty convincing, and I signed up for a lot of different services as a content creator, for using premium music to being able to use images and editing services. And I found some things that I've been spending money on for years that I should have canceled long ago. Now, one of my favorite features of Rocket Money is if there is a subscription that you see that you want to cancel, you can do so through their app. You don't have to spend the time going to the website of the money that you're spending and trying to navigate to figure out where the cancel button is. Rocket Money will do the canceling for you, which is incredibly convenient. And Rocket Money can also track and help you manage your spendings and your savings. If you want to set a budget for the month, for example, Rocket Money can help you keep track of that and notify you when you're reaching or have reached your budget for the month. Take control of your finances today and go to rocketmoney.com/Moxie to get started for free. So let's go over the core interaction that's going on here, and then we'll get into build specifics. So the first big thing to understand, which is allowing us to do ridiculous amounts of damage, is ghasterbait. This reads, funny name, when VEX dodges, she creates a Spectre nearby and becomes invisible for a duration on or her next gunshot. This allows you to summon a Spectre that is in addition to your other Spectres that will copy whatever you are holding whenever you do your dodge. And the kicker here is that it copies whatever you're holding as long as you're spec'd into heirloom. This allows us to hold an ordnance out and then dash, and then the Spectre will hold our ordnance out. And that opens up a ton of possibilities. We tried heirloom with normal guns. We're going to be going over what guns are good to hold for this capstone. However, in general, ordinances are stronger than guns, especially because the clone gets infinite ammo with them and can fire very quickly. And the ordnance that the clone is firing is going to get all of the minion damage buffs. It's not doing ordnance damage. It's not like being an ordnance scaling thing. It's a minion doing minion and action skill damage, and it's going to get all of our minion damage increases. Now, one of the things that Ordnance can do is it can proc bleeds. Bleed is still, even after its changes, one of, if not Vex's strongest skills. And so the goal here is to get our minions out, our Spectres. They're going to be firing really quickly. They're going to be proccing a bunch of kill skills for Mortal Terror. So they're going to be proccing kill skills, giving themselves a bunch of fire rate, giving themselves a bunch of damage. And then they're going to be shooting rocket launchers with a Bloodletter that can proc massive bleeds. And that is the idea of the build, is we're going to make sure we're putting out rocket launcher minions. Those minions shoot, proc big bleeds, do big damage, and then boss is dead. And there's a few caveats and some things we need to talk about, but that is the overall idea of the build. So now that we've done an overview, let's get into the skill tree specifics. So we're going 5 points into Sanguine Feeds. This gives us health restore. It is nice to get idle hands for the minion reload speed. However, on this particular setup, the minions don't ever seem to have to reload the ordinances, so the ones that are doing the most damage don't really benefit from this. We really want our minions to not die. That's one of the biggest issues at endgame, so I put 5 points into them, so whenever we get a kill, we heal all of them. We're going Grave Assault here rather than Portents of Suffering. Portents of Suffering is great for status effect damage increases. However, what's more impactful is having all of our kill skills procced, and with the minions, the faster they fire, the more uptime, the more chance they're going to have of proccing our kill skills. And so I went Grave Assault here. We're going to be getting a ton of fire rate on the minions here, which is just a massive way to increase their damage. And then 5 points into Grave Fiends, which is going to give us a lot of damage dealt. We don't have any points into Grave Quickening, which gives us action skill cooldown rate. We're going to be getting our cooldown somewhere else, which we'll talk about in a second. And then in the left side of Blue Tree, we're going Prismatic Ichor. Whenever they're proccing elements, they can proc, or whenever we proc a status effect, we can proc an additional status effect. This is a really nice skill with the clones because they seem to have their own cooldowns for Prismatic Ichor, and this can proc off of bleeds for even more status effect damage. Then we're going 3 points into Ghasterbait. This is a skill that is very powerful. However, it's annoying to use, to be honest with you. And I would really love for Gearbox to take a look at Spectres and minions. I'll rant about that later. But the big issue right now is that they only get your copied gun for 10 seconds. So that Spectre has your ordnance for 10 seconds. And after that, they're gone. Or they're not gone, but they'll drop the weapon. And Ghasterbait's on an 80-second cooldown. So this is really great for bossing, but it is quite annoying for mobbing, especially if you dash and aren't holding your ordnance, because you need to hold your ordnance for this to proc. I really think that they should rework the heirloom skill so that it is an infinite duration on your copied gun, as long as you can keep them alive, which is quite a challenge in of itself already on UVH5. If you can keep them alive, they can hold on to your gun, and then you could just plant a turret, disc jockey, a minion in a drill site, and it would just farm it for you. It would be really cool, but it does eventually get rid of the gun. Then we're going 2 points into Keen Suffering, just for our dots can crit. And then the big kicker is Heirloom, so that they can copy your ordnance. This does not work unless you have Heirloom Spect as your capstone. Then we're going into Green Tree. We've got 3 points into Guns and Needles for Rep Kit cooldown restore. This is pretty important. Rep kits are going to be a big uptime on our minions, and so 3 points here is kind of mandatory. We've got Grave Sites just for some extra crit damage. Then we're going Bloodletter. Bleed is a big aspect of our damage, so we're using a class mod that specs into this and putting as many points as we can. And then we're going 3 points into Grave Implements. This is one of those things where I need more skill points. I'd love to get this 5 out of 5. Unfortunately, we're at 3 out of 5 here. I'm testing more points into Bloodletter was more impactful than more points into Grave Implements. And then we're going Grave Power. This gives us more max kill skill stacks, which is huge, because it basically doubles the damage that we get from Grave Feeds, and it doubles the fire rate that we get from Grave Assault. So really impactful. We also get a good amount of gun damage from Grave Implements. Then we're going Keen Mind, really important skill points. Our Spectres will have good crit chance because they're going to have Keen Mind for an additional 15% crit chance, But with all of our Spectres out, we're also going to get stacking 30% crit chance. So our Spectres are going to have like a 45% chance to crit with a rocket launcher, which normally is pretty consistent. If they shoot at an enemy, they will get blood procced. And then we're going 3 points into Mortal Terror so that all of the minions that are not shooting our main gun, that aren't using the ordnance, will be proccing kill skills. So we can get benefits from our like all damage dealt, which bleeds like double dips into, and our fire rate stuff, so that they're spamming rocket launchers. And that is the skill tree setup. And then once again, we're using Coven for the crit chance and Heirloom. Now, because we're using Heirloom, what weapon you give your Spectre is pretty important for like any sort of mobbing that you're doing with this build. Only one Spectre can have your weapon at a time, so you don't want to do it while you normally would play like a Spectre build, which is throw down like 3 Spectres at a time, because all of a sudden now only one of yours is going to have your copied gun. So I usually throw a Spectre down, wait a few seconds, like 10 seconds, throw another one down, and then you can get 30 seconds of uptime of your minions having your gun. And what gun they're holding, there's a lot of options. There's a few interesting ones. Some ones to call out is I really like the Katagawa's. Katagawa's Revenge is very, very nice, especially in the fire or the shock mode. I'll match it to whatever I'm fighting, but this gives the minions big AoE damage, so they can hit multiple things, because that's one of the things they struggle with is multiple targets. The Complex Root with a Jacob's Roll, also really nice, can hit a ton of different enemies and do some decent AoE. The Stray is a homing gun, so it's perfect on the minions because they'll fire it pretty quickly, and those bullets will hone in on enemies and deal damage. Things like the AC May, Jacob shotguns in general are pretty solid. AC May is solid. The Anarchy is pretty nice on the minions. There's some tech with the King's Gambit, which we'll talk about in a second. But yeah, those are the main weapons we're holding. But what's doing damage is our rocket launcher. For our rep kit, I think it's quite important to try to get a triple bypass with Accelerator on this. This is basically where most of our cooldown is coming for this build. I've got mine on a mega triple bypass. Mega means that the cooldown is going to be 32 seconds, but the healing is higher. If you could get this, I don't know if I have one on me. Here's a mini triple bypass. The mini will come with like almost half the amount of cooldown. So I don't have a god roll here, but if you could get a mini triple bypass with Accelerator, you're going to heal less, but your cooldown on your rep kit would be way faster. And the quality of life that would be pretty massive. I unfortunately don't have that, but Accelerator with a triple bypass is really nice because we're going to get that cooldown. We're also using now with caffeine so that whenever we stab ourselves with a rep kit, we're going to be getting a flat 25% action skill cooldown reduction back or refunded, which allows us to upkeep the minions. And once again, the minions are a big part of the build. For our rocket launcher, there's a few different ones to mess around with. I think by far the best, especially for boss damage, is the Honey Bunches. It hits really hard. It's the main rocket launcher that we use on like Ordnance Amon, and we use it for the reason that it is just so powerful. It hits so hard. The Atling guns are pretty funny. Unfortunately, not the best damage. However, they are homing, so the minions use them pretty well. The disc jockeys are also hilarious. Minions will fire this and you can cover an area. Unfortunately, not the highest damage option, but pretty good mobbing. And then I also really like the Bottled Lightning. Bottled Lightning on Spectres, you need to put the Spectre almost point blank to the boss it's shooting at, but this thing has really good base damage. It procs really fast and will like instantly proc 20 stacks of bleed. So if you can position a Spectre well enough with Bottled Lightning, it hits really, really hard. You do need to get the spacing correct, because if an enemy is too far away, they literally just won't hit anything, and then you're on an 80-second cooldown. For our class mod, I was using the Scion. This can roll 5 into bleed, which is really nice. Mine's all wonky because I've got a kinetic damage roll on it. But the big thing to look for this would technically just be status effect damage. Status effect damage is pretty nice to have. On your energy shield, I was using a Watts for Dinner with Siphon and Amp. Siphon and Amp both don't really matter at all for this build. The only thing that would be beneficial is just wearing a Watts for Dinner. Siphon's technically nice to have a chance to get your extra overshield, but like where I'm not shooting my guns, so like Amp isn't actually doing anything for me. It's just the shield that I had on. And then for the enhancement, I was rocking a target enhancement with gun damage, gun fire rate, and gun splash. only thing that applies here to your minions, if I'm not mistaken, is just gun damage. It's the only thing you really care about. Fire rate and splash damage are all specific to us and not applying to our minions. However, with our specialization, we can get gun damage to impact our minion damage, so that is important. For our specializations, most of the time, I'm rocking Riddle You This for stacking up gun damage, which will then feed into I Am a Gun for the increased action skill damage based off of our gun damage, which is super nice. Our minions basically double dip into that. Honed Mind, so our minions can have more crit chance, deal more crit damage. And then I use Now With Caffeine for their uptime. For bossing, you can take off Now With Caffeine and put it on Contamination. Your minions will stack up Contamination to full stacks. And then when you're like Spectre with a rocket launcher goes up, they've got a way higher chance to proc bleeds, so that's really nice, but definitely not necessary. For firmware, I was rocking 3 Goo JFC. This gives us action skill cooldown rate of 30% plus some action skill damage. Once again, we're not spec'd into any action skill cooldown, and we really need it for like anything mobbing oriented. Not super necessary for bossing, but the quality of life that this gives is kind of massive. We have a ton of damage. And then I was rocking 2 Action Fists for the additional 30% action skill damage. Now, I do want to just provide you guys with an additional skill tree / setup. I don't usually do this, but Ghasterbait, while incredibly powerful, is a little bit frustrating for just like normal general play. If you're just trying to farm like a drill site for a while. This is, like, in my opinion, pretty mandatory for bossing, but if you're just farming like drill sites or like normal enemies, you can get a ton of damage, while not quite as high, with a lot of extra quality of life going right side with Dark Pact. The like build doesn't change. We're still doing all the same things in Green Tree, but going Dark Pact with prismatic weaponry plus obedient fiends and just upkeeping your specters, plus you get an additional one. These guys will fire really quickly, proc big bleed procs, and still delete most things. However, it's just not quite as strong for bossing. But if you're looking for a little bit more quality of life, for a build that you don't have to worry about dodging constantly or not having to dodge to not lose like half of your damage, this is a really, really cozy setup, is what I'd call it, for farming like drill sites and stuff like that with specters. Guys, that's going to do it for the build guide. I hope you enjoyed. I will catch y'all in the next one. Take care. Peace.